right. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Contractor. Today, I am joined by my usual Travis. How are you, Travis?
Fantastic.
And we have a guest today, Joel Spooner with InTree Media. Hi, Joel.
Hello,
How are you?
I'm doing very well, very well.
Yeah. As you can tell, Joel's got a slight accent. So, Joel, tell me a little bit about you, where you've lived, how life got you to where you are today.
The short version. So I'm originally from England, from southeast England, Kent, White Cliffs of Dover, not far from my home. I've lived in quite a few different places. So I grew up there, it's where my family home is, and then I went to study forestry in Bangor, North Wales. And then I did my second year of my forestry degree at UBC in Vancouver. So first came here, where I am now, to Vancouver when I was 19. And then I've spent a year living in Australia and did a few months in New Zealand, back to the UK, and now living in Vancouver, BC.
So, back to Vancouver. Beautiful place, by the way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The mountains and the forests and the water were just cooling too much.
Oh, yeah. I've been through there a couple of times. Every time I'm like, man, if it wasn't so cold here, I would definitely live here.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I've got an older brother who's 2.5 years older than me, and I've got a younger sister who's 4.5, 5 years younger than me.
Was anybody in the family in kind of the forestry industry, or like what made you go that direct? Because it sounds like, at least at a primary school, that's the direction you went. Like, what took you that direction?
Yeah, so I grew up in the countryside, so we were very lucky. We didn't own it, but there was a woodland at the bottom of our garden, and we had a pathway that went into it. So I used to play in the woods all the time as a kid. My best friend lived up the road, and we would just like walk through the woods, find each other, build camps, climb trees. Literally had the best childhood in that regard. And then so my family are not sort of. My dad worked in environmental consultancy, international development and sustainability. And my mum is an acupuncturist, Chinese herbalist, and works in shiatsu. So no sort of like family lineage of working with trees or forests. And that really came from a very good family friend of ours called Sam, who is a forester. And he lives in southwest England in Devon, and he used to come up and do a lot of work in southeast England where we lived, and he would often come and stop by at our house. And I still got a lot of respect and time for Sam, but I really, really liked him. And so he'd always come by and he'd be off doing forestry stuff. And I actually don't know, but there was obviously a point where I was kind of like, oh, I love what Sam does. I really like what he does. And I remember when I was 14, I don't know how I was so like on it in terms of like thinking about what I want to do, but I remember I was 14, standing in our back garden being a yard.
Thanks, clarification.
Not the
US audience.
Not the vegetable patch. And I was chatting to him and just asking him what A levels he did. So that would be the exams you do before you go to university. And so he was telling me what he did. So I really kind of followed in his footsteps. So he went to Bangor University and then came out and set up his own woodland management consultancy business, and then ended up going off into renewable energy and wood fuel and wood chip. So he was very much my mentor, really, without me really knowing it, into the forestry world. That's kind of how I went that route. And then as soon as I went to go look at Bangor University when I was like 16, I think, and I realized I could go to Vancouver. I was like, I was going to go do photography or forestry at university. And I was just like, which one do I want to do? And I was like, well, one's creative and I love it. I could probably teach myself. The other one is like scientific. It's probably going to set me up with some sort of like good abilities to do research and meet deadlines and understand those sorts of things. So at that time, I chose to go for that one. But it was definitely like, I can go to Vancouver. I was like, I'm doing forestry.
So Vancouver was on the roadmap or all the way back then?
When I was 16, yeah. Yeah. We came out here on a family holiday because we had some family who were considering moving over here. And I went to UBC to go meet the forestry profs at like 16. So I was like, I'm going here.
That's cool.
You got lost to Australia on your way for a brief period of time. Yeah, okay.
That's cool. And you mentioned as a kid you climbed trees in the garden or backyard, and then you met Sam, who mentored you, and then you kind of tied it all together. And which this will tie in a little bit to your current business InTree. So you mentioned you love doing photography, you love doing forestry. So this is a good tie-in moment for. So what is InTree?
Well, I'll go back just one little step as well, because it's kind of interesting when I look back on my life. So Sam, very pivotal mentor in terms of the forestry and trees side of things. At the age, well, from a young child, really. And then a very good friend of mine now, an Australian guy who moved to our area when I was 16, and I was doing photography at college at that point. And he is a director of photography. And so every Wednesday I had off college, I would go and work with him on film sets, doing TVs, dramas, documentaries. So at 16, I had this forestry interest, trees, and then I was also doing photography and also working with another mentor, effectively, in video production. And so I was just getting already like these two areas of interest of mine kind of started bubbling up. And then so there's a whole backstory to it, but ultimately now where I've kind of come to is that I've blended the film, photography, forestry, arboriculture into InTree Media, which is effectively a blending of the two things I really enjoy doing. And InTree Media produces video and photography content for the tree care industry.
I like it. And I one side note real quick, I love how important the mentorship has been to you. So mentorship is something that's important to me. I enjoy providing it. I always have enjoyed getting it. So I think that's so cool that you had mentors in these different aspects of your life who helped guide you and push you to where you are today. And, you know, for you guys listening, girls listening, that's such a huge thing. I can only imagine like how that's helped you, Joel. But, you know, mentorship as a whole, you know, if someone's 20 years ahead of you in life and they've got 20 years of experience on your half a year, whatever you got, if they can teach you all of those things they've learned over those 20 years, you're basically should, if you're listening and applying what they're teaching you, you can shorten that 20 years for yourself by using them as a mentor. So if you can take that 20 years, you know, and that takes you now 5 years to do, obviously you're going to be far more successful in life, or should be, theoretically speaking. But so anyway, side note of mentorship, super powerful. Obviously, you know, you're an example of that. So InTree, tell us a little bit more about it and what it does and kind of how you got that started and going.
So the whole purpose of InTree is to elevate the image of the tree care industry. That's why I set it up. And that being that out there at the moment, and especially 8 years ago when I was looking into doing something like this, the amount of content that was out there representing the tree care industry was very minimal. So if you say went onto any stock photo website, typed in arborist, there might be about 3,000 photographs. Of those, there might be 10% that are kind of showing an arborist, but majority of those would be very old school practices, or practices that, you know, where people aren't wearing any PPE or anything like that. And it just didn't kind of sit with me. I was like, there's a gap here where we are not being represented as arborists, as respected tradespeople, respected skilled workers who are good at what we do and are professional, and it's a skilled trade. And because I'd been photographing and filming for some time, I was like, okay, there's a gap here, and I could actually just flood this whole market with high quality images that showcase good work practice and really just put the industry's best foot forward. So I then made it my mission to go and do that. But it kind of really, the idea kind of really evolved because I've always loved creating my own thing, my own business, and having autonomy of my time and creativity. They're really important things to me. And I was very fortunate when I moved to Vancouver Well, fortunate and unfortunate. I came here and I was like, I don't want to be an arboriculture anymore. I'd done some photography work in Australia, and I was like, I'm a photographer. That's what I'm doing. That's my career. And I was just hell-bent on that. But I had no portfolio. I had no contacts. I had no relationships. I had very little going for me in that sense. And so it was actually a real struggle to try and even get work or set myself up. And one of my very good friends worked at Bartlett Tree Experts here in Vancouver. Went out for beers with a bunch of them. And then one of them was like, oh, we're calling out for arborists. Do you want to come and work for us? I just went, okay, I need the money. I just need this. Even though it wasn't the direction I wanted to go in, it transpired to be probably the best thing for me, because I ended up meeting some really, really, really great people, and just very high caliber arborists at the top of their game. So people like Matt Beaty, Tiger Devine, Elliot Wright, and then Dan Holliday from Climbing Arborist was also there. And I didn't actually know what Dan did at the time. Anyway, I was working with him, and I remember pruning a Japanese maple with him, just like a teeny tiny one. We were both on the ground, pruning away, and I was just chatting to him, asking what he does, getting to know him. And he was telling me that he creates educational videos for the industry. And I was like, I love what he's doing. Like, his whole values around like safe working practice, and I just really respected what he did. So I just said to him, I was like, oh, if you ever want some help, like, I can totally come and help you film stuff. And so he was like, that would be really cool. So I went out and started shooting some stuff for Dan there, and just elevating his production value. And then a really strong friendship started to form out of that. And then obviously spending more time with him, putting together some different productions, and then other good friends of ours as well got involved. And it's just like, I'm really kind of finding my place here, and building really good friendships with people who are also creative, who also got vision. And then I just started shooting tree climbing competitions. Other good friends of mine were doing conservation work, climbing big trees, doing research in big trees. So I'd go out and photograph those. So I just basically like started putting myself in places where it's like, this is really fun. And I started learning a lot more techniques as an arborist, because where I was before, I wasn't thinking very progressively with arboriculture, where my mindset completely shifted. Because again, mentors here were much more encouraging in terms of different climbing techniques, how to get out there and work in trees, and different things you can do as an arborist. So my whole mind opened. And then through doing that, just different opportunities opened up. So I was at a climbing competition, and someone came to me and said, oh, can you make a video for my business? And I was like, I could. Then I started chatting to them, like, do you even have a website? He's like, kind of, but it's not operating that great. I have enough of an understanding about web development and all of that at the time that I was like, well, let's have a look at your website first. And they're like, you haven't even got any photographs that actually represent your company, and some of the stuff you've got on there is maybe not showcasing you. He was looking to grow his business to sell it. So I have a strategic business mind as well. And so I said, look, I'll come out, I'll work with you for 5 days as an arborist, and I'll bring my camera gear, and I'll help you redesign and rebuild your website before we even start thinking about video. And he is still now a client today, 7 years later. That was basically, he was my first paying client that showed me people value what I can provide. And then from that point, I was like, okay, this needs to become an entity, because this is bigger than me. This is actually something that can change or support change within the industry. And so there was an expo that was happening in Vancouver in October 2018. And I remember that is my opportunity. That's my accountability point. I need to set up a business, because I had to have a business to be able to be at the expo. So I established InTree Media in April 2018, and I had until October to sort out my messaging, my branding, and everything, so I could turn up and go, hey,
yeah,
we do photography, video, web development, all these things for the tree care industry. So that's...
I like it. If you look at the tree care industry, I've always thought there's kind of two, from a marketing perspective, there's two issues. One is, and this I've noticed in regions of the country, regions of the world is a little bit different. Like where we are at, it seems like there's more that do not value the marketing, don't value the safety, and they're really, really cheap to bid against. And then there's a few that do it really, really well. But I think two industries in marketing in this industry as a whole, one of them is how they portray themselves. So like what you're talking about, the social or the media, social media, website, photography, video, they're just not doing it. Or if they are doing it, they're shooting it and it's not, you can tell it's not quality. Or they're doing that a little bit, not well, but a little bit. And then in field, they're actually not matching what they're portraying themselves as on social media. So it's kind of, it's a two-handed thing there. But I like what you're doing where it is elevating the industry. Because to me, if we can make changes like that to elevate the industry, we can then charge a little bit more because we're more professional instead of just a dude with a pickup truck and a chainsaw and climbing gear. But we can actually elevate the industry, charge more for it, weed out some of those cheap ones that are pretty likely to drop limbs, trees on a home. you know, um, but I like what you're doing because that's one aspect of that I think that is sorely missing is the storytelling of video, which is what you're doing with InTree, providing actually quality photos that a lot of these guys are not using their website. So I really like that. Travis, it looked like you were getting ready to say something right when I did.
I just think it was kind of timely. We came across this as we were doing a few marketing releases over the past couple weeks. Came across like 3 or 4 photos that were presented to us as part of the marketing, and it was almost comical. Brent was like, "No, that guy's cutting with the chainsaw, head level, no PPE, no, no, any safety precautions for if that thing kicks back." Like, okay, next photo. I forget. It was like,
Oh, there were so many. And we're lucky enough. We're just big enough where we can have an in-house videographer and photographer and stuff. But we still use a marketing firm as well for some stuff. But yeah, we were going through some, I don't know if it was, well, I won't name drop on here, but online websites where you can buy stock photography. And it wasn't InTree, by the way, guys. Definitely not InTree. But it was ridiculous looking through it. I'm like, okay, there's so many safety hazards in that photo that are obviously not mitigated. That guy doesn't know what he's doing. That's probably actually a homeowner or a dude with one chainsaw and a buddy out there doing this work. So anyway, but yeah.
that was literally like in the last week or two, and I was like, Joel,
Yeah.
I get it, man.
Yeah.
So, what's been kind of the industry feedback as you've entered the market? You're providing this. Uh, what's been the kind of the reception? Finding those who are all on board and see the value. Is there common things that they're finding, and what's driving their interest?
Yeah, so it's definitely well received, and very often all the conversations I have is, oh, we need this. The industry needs this. So I'm hearing that a lot, definitely. And then it's just how people go about actually taking action on that. And because there's kind of two components to InTree Media. There's InTree Media, which is very much custom content, which primarily shoots for manufacturers of equipment like Samsung, Clogger, Recoil, and shoots for equipment suppliers and training organizations. And we also shoot for some tree care companies as well. And then there's InTree Stock, which is the stock photo website, which is ultimately the more easily accessible price point, at least for arborists to access, and not just for arborists, but for insurance companies and associations to access high quality content of arboriculture and arborists at work. And so there's kind of like 2 different avenues in which I'm talking, and there's this need that I'm seeing. And I think this is just partly more down to my marketing thing. So I'm having lots of conversations. I go to lots of events and I talk to people, and everyone's like, yeah, we really, really need this. And then there's someone in that chain of command who's then the decision maker. Okay, yes, we need this. But then it might come down to actually price point. Oh, we can't afford to do this right now, or a perceived thing. Like they may not even go in to go look. They just might think, oh, high quality, professional, expensive. So that there might be a disconnect there somewhere, but I haven't done enough research in this right now to kind of like really understand what that is. And even just hearing you, Brent, talk that you're at a position where you can afford to have an on-staff photographer, videographer, like that would be the goal for everyone. If you can get to that position, and that's like quite often what I suggest to people, because quite often arborists are creatives. More often than not, arborists are creatives, and there will be someone who actually loves doing photography and video. And if you can actually empower them on your crew to actually do that. So instead of like shutting people down and be like, stop doing selfies, stop doing this. If someone's picking up the camera naturally and going, I want to keep taking photographs, like harness that, really utilize that and see that as part of production, as opposed to like limiting production. Because if you've got someone on your crews who actually loves shooting, then put them on the crew, because they can shoot for a period of time and then they can help drag brush. They can go up, they can prune a tree, and instead of coming down, they can wait until the next person's pruning the tree adjacent to them. So you can actually like, if I was running my own tree care company, I would be employing someone who is creative and wants to do that as well, and building it into how we price our jobs, how we go out and do things like that. There's a really good example, like, so a good buddy of mine, Strathcona Tree Care in Vancouver Island. He's got a wicked guy who's really, really good photographer, really good videographer, and wants to get into art. And so he's building his experience as an arborist. And so he's now able to produce high quality content for marketing. There are 3 guys at the moment, you know. So it's possible at any level, and I think it's just how you think about it, and who's on your team and how you empower people within that, especially in this day and age. So that's a slight tangent, but that's what I think is just like a really, like, it's just important hearing you say that, Brent, that you've got the capabilities of doing that. And I don't think you have to be a big company to be able to actually access that.
That's actually a really good idea as well. What you just said, like having, if you got someone that's naturally good at it, you know, give them some actual legit camera gear or whatever, and embrace that drive that they have to do it. And yeah, no, that's actually a great idea.
It goes back into, so a lot of our focus for a lot of the media for the past month has been talent, attraction, retention, and attraction, acquisition, retention, and it's a big challenge across the board for almost everybody in the industry and most industries in general. Is finding good talent, and that is one of the key things, is keeping people engaged, finding passions, allowing them to tap into it, creating career paths for them. And then there's also another element too, in that if they're part of your crew, you know who they are. You've worked with them. You know the personality. They get along. They have your same values. So finding other avenues for them to add value is going to be way more impactful to leverage them and get them buy-in in a different way into the company, and them adding value in a unique way that taps into their passion. But you also, they're a known entity. It's not somebody that you're taking a chance on a resume or something. So like, I love that as far as finding the talent in house, and empowering them, and giving them career options. Love that.
Being an arborist is an amazing job. There can be parts of it that are repetitive, and you know, you might lose steam and energy in there. And it's kind of like, as you were saying, retaining employees is actually one of the biggest challenges, and then also then like hiring new employees. So if you're able to create a culture and a structure within your business that is stimulating and empowering and opens opportunities for training or career development, then you're basically setting up a stronger future for yourself that's going to be more sustainable. And so, for example, like, if you're interested in going through the whole ISA credentials, say you've got someone who's wanting to go to their ISA, and you're like, okay, we'll pay you an extra $1 an hour if you get your ISA. That's one incentive. The other thing could be as well is like, how about you write blogs for our website? Okay, so while studying for the ISA, you actually write blogs that are going to help you understand what you need to do for the ISA exam. So you could be writing blogs about cabling and bracing. So instead of having just be like, I've got to go study this because I'm going to get an extra $1 an hour, it's like, actually go, wow, I get to learn. Oh, cool. I'm going to write blogs for the business, for the company. I'm involved in this. This is like, people, I'm speaking for myself, but I believe like a number of people feel like this, like people want to own something. They want to have some form of ownership and creative control or capacity over something. And so if you find that within someone and you can empower them to go out, photograph someone cabling bracing, now go write a blog about it. Now you've got yourself some marketing content that didn't actually cost you anything. More and above. And I would still say pay them. Like, you know, if you're employing them, it's not that you don't pay them. They're just not doing tree work. They're doing marketing work for your tree care company. And they're going to have a much deeper understanding, more intimate knowledge than, say, hiring someone else to write blogs for you. And so I just think there's that really quite clever ways that you can work with people to help them improve their career and also help you get content, because it's one of the hardest things, and you have to produce so much content nowadays in order to kind of beat algorithms, in order to beat Google and all of their paid ads setups. It's just ongoing. So instead of getting lost in, how are we going to do this? Just like focus on how can we work with our crews to actually do all of the components that we now need in order to market ourselves. Because it's not as simple as it's like just go down the local pub. Hey, I'm an arborist who needs their trees cut down, and chat to a few people. It's now like you're talking to tens of thousands of people, and there's many, many other arborists out there. So it's how are you going to stand out and build that trust and confidence with these 10,000 other people, whilst you've got a bunch of other arborists also out there saying, hey, we do this. So it's I think that would be like, and it's also exciting because then you build camaraderie, you build a team, and there's like much more input into it as opposed to like business owner workers.
Yeah, it's a really good leadership example as well, what we just gave. If you look at, as a leader, you should be trying to see, hey, this employee, yeah, he's an operator or he's a tree climber, he's whatever right now. But gosh, I see these little nuggets of passion in here. And if you can harness that, you're going to, so the big thing now with, retaining employees is obviously culture. So if an organization has no culture, like what you just talked about, where you have the leader and you have all the doers, in the field, if that's all it is, and there's no buy-in, there's no, like you said, like that relationship, then you're just another tree care company that's cutting trees, meaning that when they get mad at you, they're going to go apply somewhere else because you're no different than anybody else. But like what you're saying, where you're getting that engagement, you're harnessing their actual passion and skill. They may love doing trees, but if you can do like the blog, or if they love to write, if you can do, the photography or the video or many other things, if you can harness that and embrace and say, hey, you're really good at this. You can provide this value for our organization, build your own skill as well. And who knows, maybe one day that's what you're doing on your own. And we would love to see you do that because we want to see you succeed. So there's a huge leadership thing there as well.
Yeah. And that really just comes into elevating the image of the industry. So it's not just about like us producing high quality content, video and photography. It's actually about elevating people as individuals, empowering that opportunity to grow, and just like trying to shift that whole sort of just how we respect ourselves as individuals, as arborists. I think just like if that can start to change and shift, you then shift how we're then perceived externally as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
it definitely goes back to the overall marketing. But so I'm just curious because we love to give the audience little nuggets, something they can take away from each podcast. It's like, oh, that actually can transform my business, or that one little piece of advice completely changed how I do whatever it is. Obviously, you've got an awesome marketing background. It sounds like even though maybe you're not necessarily in a leadership position with like 35, 40, 50, 60, 100 employees, you have a leadership mind and a culture building mind. So I'm curious with all of that, what's one nugget that you might impart?
I think it's kind of what I've been speaking to there. It's almost a question. It's like, if I was a business owner, the question would be, how can I do things differently? And how can I work with my employees? How can I empower my employees? And I would be asking myself those questions. And then if you don't have the answers, it's then talking with other business owners and actually like not doing it in silo, and even talking with your employees. You're actually going, okay, this is, talking with your employees, building a business with your employees.
I like that. The last sentence, building the business with your employees. I like that a lot.
It goes back to culture. And it gets talked about. So I think it was Peter Drucker, the business. He said something like, "Culture will eat strategy for breakfast."
Mm-hmm.
You have the best strategy, your culture sucks. It doesn't matter.
And it's even more so in today's world. I feel like the last several years, like if you don't have a culture, to me, companies that do not have culture will cease to exist in a few years. To me, I don't know.
And it changes with every generation and everything that's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the industry. Nothing's stagnant. It's always changing. Everything's evolving around you. And so what might have been the cultural norms and acceptance and what empowered you 10 years ago has probably shifted and probably will not have the potency or impact that it used to. And not that it's a complete scrapping of everything, but there's definitely standard principles and practices, treating people well, empowering them. Like there's other things that are time tested and proven, but there's also nuances on top of that change with the times. But yeah, even with the younger generations, culture is so important, and they've got different needs too, based off of their environment, what they've been raised in, the world that they're living in, the pressures that they have. They have different needs and different drives than others of us. Others have more gray hairs that have been around. So culture is so important, and I think people recognize, or at least on the surface, that culture is important, but recognizing it on the surface and actually implementing a strategy that works, it's a lot harder.
Yeah. I think we live in a world where people there's so much stuff online anymore. We buy everything online, and some of us are a little bit older and can remember a day where that wasn't the case. But I think what it has done is highlighted that we still are human. We still want a relationship. It is nice to be able to go somewhere and buy from someone that you actually, maybe it's they're like-minded or whatever, but there's something about them that makes you want to connect. And I think that's the importance of like what Joel's doing with the photography and video, is that storytelling where I can go online, view your website, feel a connection with you because of a video or whatever, or a job site or postings or whatever, but social media. And that there makes me connect with you on a human level and therefore want to buy from you. So you guys listening that do not have active websites, social media, and are not engaging, gosh, you're missing a bunch of customers out there. As we wrap this up, Joel, how do we find you?
How do you find me? That's one thing I've done. I've hidden behind my brand, which I'm trying to move out of, because exactly like what you're talking about, it's about building relationships. I'm very much the in-person go-to events. You'll find me at the TCI Expo. You'll find me at other climbing competitions and industry events. That's where I put myself out. Online, I'm being encouraged to put myself out more, because people, as you say, they actually build the relationship. They buy the relationship.
And by the way, that's how we met Joel.
Yeah, there you go.
He lives it.
So, but that being said, you can find InTree Media at intreemedia.com or InTree Media on Instagram. And then InTree Stock, which is the stock photo site where you can go on and find high quality images. We're also we're in the moment developing website templates that are actually scalable. So instead of like Wix or Square, where you buy it, but it's relatively cheap and affordable, once you come into a position of, I want to actually invest in SEO, they have limitations. All of our templates are built on WordPress, which gave you much more flexibility. So we're going to be launching that hopefully March, April time. So the stock site will also have a website template place where you can actually go as an arborist who wants to create a website now at an affordable price, but also wants to scale their business later. So you can find that at intreestock.com. And InTree Stock also has an Instagram. Currently, it's just me working on that one, so that one's a little bit quiet. But those are the two places. And then if you want to find me in person, the Tree Care Industry Expo, I'm always there, hopefully doing a talk this year at that one on this exact sort of topic around leadership, content development, and marketing. So hopefully I'll get that slot, and then you can come find me in person.
Nice. I like it. So you guys getting started or don't have a social media presence or a media presence, online or whatever, Joel's your dude. Hit him up. It's time to pull that trigger. So Travis, you got anything you want to finish up with?
Yeah, it's kind of a last thought. So those of us who digital natives who've grown up with technology, or we saw the internet come to pass, and those, so in their 40s, 30s, 40s, predominantly in their 40s, are the new homeowners, and the business owners are typically leading organizations. There's study after study that there's an expectation that you can find, if you're going to contract out with somebody or hire them, that you find them online. And there's an inherent distrust, whether it's valid or not, for those who don't have a digital presence, that these generations now that we become so digitally focused that we have to, we don't trust those who don't have a digital presence, or we think that there's something wrong with them, that they're not as professional, whether it's true or not. So that's usually the first contact you have with your customers is whatever digital presence you have, and so important.
It's the first impression nowadays.
Yeah. As opposed to the first time they see your face in the pub. I just love that. I just love that one because that's how we used to do it. That's how we used to do business. But I completely agree with you. It's such a good point. It's the first touch point, and that's where you build trust or break trust. And that's what happened. That's a lot of what I speak to in the talk that I give on this. It's all about building trust and that relationship. It's the most powerful thing.
Yeah, and you're kind of setting the standard in that moment as well. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
You control it, for better, whatever you put out there or don't put out there, that's what your potential customer is going to think about you. Because most people will Google, duck it, whatever, will search you immediately, even after meeting you, get a business card or whatever. They're going to go look you up online and see if it's a consistent, if who they met in person is consistent online with what they were promoting. And like, I'm the best company, we have tons of, and they go out and you have no digital presence or very little, or the photos or whatever, the website's really crummy. Again, whether it's true or not, they're going to make an instant assumption about your business and the quality, and it will have an impact on whether they pursue you or not. So important.
Did you just say duck it? Like duck go? Is
Duck,
that a thing?
Are you serious? So that's anybody who doesn't. Are we going to get in trouble with like whether we keep this? A lot of search engines. So what's the old adage of if it's a digital product and they don't charge you for it, you are the product. So they're capturing information on you and selling it or whatever. So it's no surprise, and everybody knows that some of the larger ones track your information, use it, sell it, are marketing towards you, but capturing your information. So DuckDuckGo, as of now anyway, is a privacy.
I just never heard anybody refer to it. Usually it's like, hey, I'm going to Google that. Now it's going to be, I'm going to duck it.
Yeah.
It sounds better.
It's catching on, man. So it's the privacy search engine. They don't track you. It keeps and it's not for if you're doing anything wrong, if you just don't think it's moral or ethical, that some companies making a lot of money off of tracking you and manipulate. It's an option.
To get to your point there, though, on not on DuckDuckGo, but to get to your point on like scrolling and searching, hey, I'm trying to find a lawn care company or a tree care company or whatever. I know recently for our house, we hired a different lawn care company for next year. And I spent, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes just typing in and then scrolling through websites, trying to find one that looked reputable. Because again, that's my first impression. And my thought is, if your website is terrible, you didn't put any effort or attention into that, and it's hard to find you. You don't invoice me the way I want to invoice, electronically or whatever. To me, you've lacked attention to detail there. So I automatically am assuming you're going to lack attention to detail on my lawn. So I didn't call the places. They may do great work, but your online presence does not say that you do because it's not there. So I just thought that was kind of a good kind of point to what you were saying there, Travis.
It's so true. And there's tons of studies and things out there where they poll generation after generation, like it or not, that's where we're at. And it's probably only going to index more on that side as far as you have to have a digital presence. It has to be consistent with your brand because it will have an impact on the customer's perception of you and whether they do business with you. So we're thankful that people like Joel are elevating the image of the tree care industry. Is that the tagline? Out there pushing the boundaries and providing options and helping solve it.
It's people like Joel, that will help change this industry. It can't be him by himself, but a lot of people with that kind of vision, that is what will change this industry. So Joel, thank you for your time. Thank you for being on with us today. It's a pleasure.
It's great to be on here. I really, really appreciate the invite. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. To all you guys listening, if you like the episode, share it with others. Obviously we're not charging for this at all. No ads were ran. But the only thing we do ask, please tell other people about it. So Joel, thank you. Let's elevate this tree care game together, and we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.